Welcome everyone. Today we will be seeing about the examination of lymph nodes in the head and neck region and its applied aspect. Before moving on to the topic, we should be knowing about the components of the lymphatic system. The components are lymphocytes, lymphatic vessels, lymph nodes, tonsils, spleen, and the thymus gland. So basically, the lymph vessels and the lymphoid organs are divided into two types. They are central lymphoid organs and peripheral lymphoid organs. Central lymphoid organs includes a bone marrow and thymus, whereas the peripheral lymphoid organs include lymph nodes, spleen, and tonsils. So basically, what is a lymph node? They are the ovoid or a bean-shaped nodular formation composed of a dense accumulation of lymphoid tissue, which may vary in size from 2 to 20 millimeter and average of a 15 millimeter in a longitudinal diameter. And there are about almost 800 lymph nodes in the human body, but are only 300 located in the head and neck region. And lymph nodes usually occur in groups: superficial lymph nodes and deep lymph nodes. Superficial lymph nodes are located in the subcutaneous connective tissue, whereas the deeper lymph nodes, they lie beneath the fascia and muscles. So superficial lymph nodes are always, they act as a gateways for assessing the health of entire lymphatic system. Um, so here we can able to see the lymph nodes, different lymph nodes are distributed in the head and neck region. So basically classified into two types: peripheral lymph nodes and deep cervical lymph nodes. Under peripheral lymph nodes, we have superficial and deep cervical lymph nodes. Under superficial lymph nodes, submental, submandibular, preauricular, postauricular, occipital, anterior cervical, and superficial cervical nodes. Under deep cervical nodes, we have pretracheal, paratracheal, retropharyngeal, and valdeus ring. Under deep cervical nodes, we have jugulodigastric and jugulo-omohyoid nodes. And in this image, we can able to differentiate various lymph nodes location. So the first one is the submental lymph node. You can see it is located under the chin in the submental triangle of the surface of the mylohyoid muscle. And the draining area for this submental node is the lower lip, the chin, tip of the tongue, and the anterior of the floor of the mouth. So before knowing about the lymph nodes, you should be knowing about the location, the actual location, and where it drains. And the next lymph node is the submandibular group of lymph node. It is located within the submandibular region, and it is scattered over the surface of submandibular salivary gland. An extension of the submandibular group lie on the cheek superiorly, and it is called as a buccal lymph nodes. So where it drains in the submental nodes, in the cheek region, the nose, upper lip, maxillary teeth, the vestibular region, gingiva, posterior floor of the mouth, and also the tongue. So this is the draining area for the submandibular group of lymph nodes. And then comes the parotid lymph nodes. Parotid lymph nodes located superficial to the capsule of the parotid gland, and where it drains the eyelid, the temple, the prominence of the cheek, and the auricle. And also the efference of this parotid lymph nodes lies deep in the parotid nodes and the superficial cervical nodes. And next we have a occipital. We have a posterior cervical lymph nodes, submandibular, submental, parotid lymph nodes. These are very important. And then comes the jugulo-omohyoid and jugulo-digastric lymph nodes, preauricular and postauricular lymph nodes. And then in the deep cervical lymph nodes, we have a prelaryngeal, paratracheal, and this protracheal and retropharyngeal also. Um, Usually, the retropharyngeal nodes will, lie up over the mastoid process. And then this image depicts the levels of lymph nodes from level 1 to 6 distributed in the head and neck region. And here some of the important lymph nodes are seen. One is the supraclavicular lymph nodes. It originates in the supraclavicular triangle and it drains into the axillary region, thorax, abdomen, and pelvis. And here we can also see the jugulodigastric lymph node. Where it is located, below the posterior belly of digastric, and it drains the palatal tonsils and posterior one-third of the tongue. And also we can able to see the superficial cervical lymph nodes. These are the group of 3 to 4 lymph nodes which lie along the external jugular vein, and it will be situated superficial to the upper part of sternocleidomastoid. And this superficial cervical lymph node will drain the floor of the external acoustic meatus, the lobule of the ear, and also the angle of the jaw. We can able to see the auricular lymph nodes also. Um, then coming to clinical examination of the lymph nodes in the head and neck region. Uh, Before going into the clinical examination, we should know certain things that has to be asked to the patient during history taking, which will give some clue to the diagnosis. Um, for example, age, certain diseases, conditions like a tuberculosis, syphilis, primary malignant lymphomas will affect the younger age. But tuberculosis is also seen in the elderly age group. But certain malignant lymphomas are very common in the younger individuals. And the duration of the condition, when it is acute condition, if the patient has a pain and the inflammation, it can be a sign of acute lymphadenitis. And which group of lymph nodes are affected first? For example, cervical group of lymph node affects first in the Hodgkin's lymphoma or Hodgkin's disease, whereas inguinal lymph nodes are affected mostly first in the filariasis. So the group of lymph nodes which is getting affected first will also contribute a little for a diagnosis. And then the pain and the nature of the pain. Acute and chronic infection. Acute infection, mostly they are painful, whereas certain conditions like syphilitic condition and primary malignant lymphomas, the lymph nodes affected may be painless. And then any history of fever. For example, in the TB lymphadenitis, the patient will have evening rise of the temperature, which is a characteristic feature of a tuberculosis. And whereas in the filariasis, the patient will have a periodic fever for more than a month. So the history of a fever will also give certain amount of clue for the diagnosis. And then primary focus of infection. So whenever the lymph node is enlarged, it is advisable to look for the primary focus of drainage where the lymph node is. And this should be done in the acute and chronic septic lymphadenitis. If we are opting for the incision and the drainage. And then asking for the loss of appetite and weight. So in case of any malignancy or lymphadenopathies, the patient will have generalized weight loss and also some degree of loss of appetite. And then pressure effects. Pressure effects is nothing but any compression of the lymph node over any organ or nerve which is exerting the pressure over that organ. For example, the patient may experience a dysphagia when esophagus is pressurized. So, in such condition, we have to look for that sign, any pressure effects. And also any past history of enlargement of the lymph nodes. For example, there will be an enlargement or engorgement of the epitrochlear or suboccipital group of lymph nodes in cases of secondary stage of syphilis. So that has to be considered. And then family history, sometimes history of tuberculosis may run in the families. If the one person in the family has got affected, the other person will also get affected. So history of tuberculosis has to be ruled out. So this is all about the history part, and then moving on to the examination of the lymph nodes. So broadly categorized into two subheadings as the inspection and palpation. So in the inspection, we have to look for the number of lymph nodes which is affected. For example, a single or multiple or group of lymph nodes affected. For example, in a few conditions, there will be a generalized involvement of the lymph nodes. For example, in the Hodgkin's lymphoma, lymphosarcoma, and even in the granulomatous disease like sarcoidosis. And in position of the lymph node, you have to look for the cervical group, especially the tuberculosis. And then we have epitrochlear and occipital lymph node involvement in cases of secondary syphilis. And then you have to look for the skin overlying the swelling. In acute lymphadenitis, the skin usually becomes inflamed, reddened, and there will be a edema also, and there will be a definitely a induration. And for example, in the patients with the TB lymphadenitis, the skin over the matted lymph nodes will have a cold abscess. Sometimes they will reach the point of bursting and the skin becomes red and crusty. So that should also be noted down. And then again, the pressure effects that has to be seen. Careful inspection must be made with the whole body to detect any pressure effect due to enlargement of the lymph nodes. And then any edema or swelling in the lower limb, it may contribute to the formation of any enlargement of the inguinal lymph nodes. So that has to be seen. And swelling and venous engorgement in the head and neck region, face. It may also be due to the pressure effect of lymph nodes to the root of the neck. And sometimes hypoglossal nerve will also be involved from the enlarged group of cervical lymph nodes in the Hodgkin's lymphoma. So there will be a pressurizing effect over the hypoglossal nerve, particularly in the Hodgkin's lymphoma. So this is all about the inspection in the lymph node examination, and then comes the palpation. So in the palpation, all the inspectory findings has to be confirmed, including the site, size, shape, and whatever we have observed in the inspection. So basically, inspection is what we see, and palpation is what we feel. So we have to confirm the inspectory findings, and also additionally we have to look for the consistency. Consistency is how the texture and the feeling while like palpating the lesion or a lymph node. So the consistency, the enlarged lymph node should be carefully palpated using the palmar aspect. This is a palmar aspect of the fingers, using three fingers or four fingers. Starting from the index finger to the little finger, we can use these four fingers to palpate the enlarged lymph nodes, and it should be gently rolled over the swelling or a lymph node, and a mild or gentle pressure should be applied over the lymph nodes. So the patient's response has to be recorded, and during the time of palpation, if there is any consistency or pain should also be noted down. And then enlarged lymph nodes consistency, it may be a soft one when it is acute lymphadenitis or any other infectious condition. And elastic and rubbery lymph nodes, we usually see um, in Hodgkin's lymphoma, and a discrete firm and shorty lymph nodes we see in a syphilis. And stony hard consistency, it is a possible sign of a malignancy. So this we have seen in the inspection, number, position, skin overline, the swelling, and the pressure effects, and palpation. And then we have to look for the matting. A group of lymph node that feels connected to move as a unit is known as a matted lymph node. Tuberculosis and acute tuberculous lymphadenitis, we can able to delineate this kind of a group of lymph nodes. And then moving on to the fixity of the surrounding structures or underlying structure of the lymph node. So the enlarged lymph node should be carefully palpated to know if it is fixed to the skin, deeper fascia, muscles, vessels, or the nerves. And then we have to look for the draining area. A cervical lymph nodes receive the lymphatics from the head, face, mouth, pharynx, and the neck. Uh, Left supraclavicular lymph node is also called as a Virchow's lymph nodes. It receives the lymphatics from the upper limb, left sides of the chest, including the breast, and also the abdomen. So in this image, we can able to see the Virchow's lymph node, enlarged one. It is also referred to as a Troisier sign. So now moving on to the method of palpation, how we are palpating an individual lymph nodes. For preauricular lymph nodes, they should be palpated anterior to the tragus of the ear using the palmar aspect of the two fingers. And then posterior auricular lymph nodes, they are palpated behind the ear. Posterior is behind. Behind the ear, they are palpated on the mastoid process. And then occipital lymph nodes, they are palpated at the base or the lower border of the skull. And then coming to the submental lymph nodes, they are palpated under the chin. The clinician can stand behind the patient, and we have to instruct to bend the patient's neck slightly forward so that the muscles and the fascia in that regions will get relaxed. And fingers of both the hands, preferably the index finger and the middle finger, it has to be rolled down under the chin, and we have to look for any induration or fixity to the underlying structures. Then moving on to this palpation of submandibular lymph nodes, they are palpated at the lower border of the mandible, approximately at the angle of the mandible. So we have to instruct the patient to passively flex the neck towards the side where we are going to palpate. And then the palmar aspect of the finger is pushed over the soft tissue below the mandible and near the midline. And we should move the fingers laterally to draw the nodes outwards along the lower border of the mandible. This way, we have to palpate the submandibular lymph nodes. And then anterior cervical lymph nodes, both superficial and the deep anterior cervical lymph nodes, will lie on the top and beneath the sternocleidomastoid muscle on either side. So we have to palpate along the course of the muscle. And posterior cervical lymph nodes, they will extend in the line posterior to the sternocleidomastoid muscle. So the entire bulk of the muscle has to be palpated from the origin to the insertion. That is from the mastoid to the clavicle. So that's all about the palpation of important lymph nodes in the head and neck region. Now moving on to the applied anatomy or the applied aspects of the lymph nodes. Basically, lymph nodes or they are the coarse drainage to our body where they act as a first line of defense in the body. So first we have to look for the blockage of lymph flow possibly in the head and neck region. And also, while draining the infected area in incision and drainage, the infected lymph nodes carrying the infected debris may be inflamed, resulting in the lymphadenitis or lymphangiitis. So, lymph debridement. Any enlargement of the nodes, when it is acute condition, the appearance will be very shiny, the skin overlying will be red, inflamed, and edematous. So that is called as a lymphadenitis. And sometimes the enlargement of the nodes will also interfere with the salivary secretion. For example, parotid lymph nodes, which overlie the parotid gland or fascia. Due to the enlargement of the lymph nodes, the gland will also get blocked. So because of that, the patient may get xerostomia and a dry mouth. So that should also be considered. And then what else the enlarged lymph node will cause to the capillaries and the blood vessels? It will cause a flushed face. That is the reason when the patient has a cold or any runny nose, the patient will have blockage and flushed face due to the improper blocking of the lymph nodes in the maxillary region. And also it acts as one of the important and convenient route for a spread of the cancer cells. So it helps in the diagnosis of the primary site of the malignant cancer, and also it helps in diagnosing and also to rule out the prognosis and classifying the stage of the cancer, the level of lymph nodes affected, and whether the bone involvement is there. Depending on that, the diagnosis and treatment plan will vary. And also it helps the surgeon to do the block resection during the operative procedure. So it somehow helps in the treatment procedures also. Um, so that is all about the examination of lymph nodes in the head and neck region. Thank you.